right. Hello and welcome to a training camp edition of the Same Old Stripes podcast, or should I say a joint practice edition of the Same Old Stripes podcast. We're hitting record at 5:36 Eastern Standard Time, where the Bengals and Packers have recently wrapped up. It was a pretty interesting practice between the two teams, it sounds like. We're going to get into all of that and more. Lots to talk about. Training camp is raging on. We talked to Cordell Volson already. We talked to Strawberry Ice last week. Now we're going to talk to the boys. We're going to bring it back in. And we're going to talk about things that are going on. So it's a trio show today. In Wisconsin, we have T.O. And in New York, we're going to have Billy. But we'll check in with T.O. first. T.O., my friend, how are you? How are things? I know you've been to Arizona since the last time we've talked.
Yeah, man, we're tired. Me and my son woke up at 10:30 this morning, so obviously we were tired from traveling. But yeah, it was fun, man. We got to go out to the Grand Canyon. My son got to see it. It's probably the one time and only time I'll go because it is kind of a trip once you get up there. So yeah, it was fun, man. It was good to get away. And, now with the Reds struggling, it's even more fun that it's football season. The Reds got us to this point. That's all we wanted them for. And now it's football season, baby.
Yeah, it is funny that the Reds decided, right now, they're like, okay, just so you know, Joe Burrow, I know that the whole thing that you get, and Joe Burrow's hurt, so this is kind of the caveat on all that. But, that we'll talk about that that's another conversation topic. Anyway, I'm glad you had fun in Arizona with your son. I'm glad you got to see the canyon. I love the canyon. Beautiful place. Go see it if you haven't. I'm glad you're back to talk Bengals with us today. Billy, you're on the Same Old Stripes podcast with us. How are you, my friend? I know you've been busy as well.
Good, man. Busy. The baby turned 1 last Monday, so we had a little party out here and, guest hosting, doing a lot of training stuff with the work. It's kind of our down season, so just doing a lot, man. Doing a lot. Getting our finalized our schedule the other day for our season, so looking forward to that. And really getting to the nitty gritty of I think we're about 3 weeks out, right? 3.5 weeks out from kickoff, so ready to go.
Yeah, how crazy is that? I mean, we're gonna look at the calendar here soon. We're getting right up on that opening Thursday game. We're right there, but just get excited about football, people. We're getting that rotten grass smell in the air. It's all coming. It smells like football in the air. It's that good time of year. I think we haven't discussed something that happened, even on the podcast. And I think the biggest piece of Bengals news since the last time we talked, other than the Joe Burrow injury, which is not something we really want to talk about right now, the Logan Wilson extension came through. I think that it was one that we weren't 1,000,000% sure was going to happen. It was one we felt maybe, I'd say 70% sure about happening as a fan base and collective. But the Bengals clearly felt pretty good about getting it done. Logan's deal doesn't really break the bank. He's around the top 10th highest paid linebacker. I think he's the 9th highest paid off the top of my head. Him and Jermaine Pratt combined for about $16 million between the two of them over each of the next 3 years, which is about $4 million less than the Packers. What am I talking about? Getting ahead of myself. The Baltimore Ravens will pay Roquan Smith per season, so you're getting 2 really good linebackers for the price of 1 elite linebacker. I love that. I love that roster math. Billy, I'm going to let you jump in on Logan Wilson first. What did you think when you saw his extension come through, and how important do you think this deal is for the Bengals' greater structure going forward?
Yeah, I think you put it best that the price tag, I think, is the biggest point. I think we said it texting last week that it's the Burrow discount, right? Guys are going to take a discounted rate to play on this team. And, we talked about it 6 months ago with Mixon of, hey, he's either going to take this cut or he's not going to be here. He took the cut, right? Logan came up, Logan took a cut because, let's be frank, if Logan Wilson tests the waters this offseason, he's going to get a higher deal than that. I honestly, as long as he stays healthy and has average production, he's getting a better deal on the market than what he got now. And I think you're going to kind of see that. I think we all know the next domino to fall. In my opinion, I would rather see it be T first, followed by Joe, because I think the thing that worries me a little bit is just a little bit of the hypeness if we get Joe signed first of all. There's no way there's any money. There's this and that. That kind of like puts that added pressure on T being that last guy that has to get signed after Joe. So, I mean, I got to kind of tie it back to Nine that I really think Nine's orchestrating a lot of this, man. Like his presence in the locker room, his presence there every day. Even see him today walking around practice. Like it brings a different light to this franchise that we haven't had in the last 25, 30 years, man. And, you know, like I said, I think he's really behind a lot of it, right? Like obviously the front office is working out a lot of these deals, but, you know, when I'm Logan Wilson's agent and I'm looking at him saying, hey, like, you have to weigh it out, right? Like, and I think we talked about that with Jesse and Jesse saying, hey, like, I can't leave $8 million on the table, which I understand Jesse being a second-round pick. Like, I get that. But now you get guys like Logan Wilson who've had that taste of success, back-to-back AFC Championship games, going to one Super Bowl, and, you know, like, you probably sit down and say, hey, do I get an extra year and a few $1 million less to play with this team? And I think we've seen the trend that's going forward the last couple of months as guys are willing to do that.
It'll be really interesting now to see how it comes back around when, you know, we continue to talk about the T. Higgins, you know, situation. And a guy I do want to kind of get to later is DJ Reader, who might kind of sneak into that same conversation. But before we kind of talk about some of those other extension candidates, and Billy, I love all the things you hit on. I mean, he's a core player of this team. Getting him on that figure, I mean, it does set that trend. It helps them with everything going forward, and having those guys that buy in on that vision is huge too. So we'll see if that's a one-off. We'll see if that's, you know, so Burrow orchestrating it. I mean, he definitely sets the tone. There's definitely a tone set in the Joe Burrow side of this. But Tio, I would love to get your reaction now to this, the impact of this Logan Wilson signing, and what it signals not only for him, but for the, you know, direction this franchise is going to set with contracts going forward.
Yeah, I think it's funny because I've been on record saying that I wouldn't give Logan a contract, and it was mainly due to, you know, having Akeem and then locking up GP in the summer, and you know, I just couldn't justify paying $20 million to the linebacker core after, you know, we've seen what happens, but that deal, and I think I texted you guys right away, was so good that you couldn't not do it, especially for Logan. You were thinking 13 mil, maybe 14 mil. So for him to come away with what he got, which, you know, awesome for him and awesome for the Bengals, to come away with that, man. And it's exciting. I think it really sets you up for the future. They clearly have a direction, man. They've drafted and replaced, you know, at corner, and along the D line. And, you know, even when we got Trey Hendrickson done for another year, you know, it just sets you up, man. And I think the Bengals are doing such a good, sustainable direction that, you know, the Bengals are going to be good for a long time. Whereas, you know, you look at other teams, I'm going to use the Bills, for example. You go out and pay, you know, Von Miller, who's old, that much money. That's going to be tough, man. You're going to go year 3 of that, and you're going to be like, dang, man, that's why Stephon Diggs isn't here anymore. That's why blank isn't here anymore. And I just like what the Bengals are doing, man. I think we're set up for the long run.
Maybe it's the Duke Tobin stereotype, but making sure they give these guys their number, like the Bengals' internal number. To me, I think that's been the key to all of this. It's never going above what they're comfortable with. And Joe Burrow, maybe that's the guy where you have to do it, or maybe Jamar Chase is the guy where you have to do it. But that's retaining franchise players that you cannot lose. So that's kind of where I'm at with it and how I view just the organizational direction on that front.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'll piggyback on UTO. Like, I don't think there's a guy out there that's as down on the Buffalo Bills as I am, man. Like, I think, and I hate to, like, tie it back again and sound like a broken record, but it comes down to the quarterback playing the quarterback position. Like, I think you're seeing, and maybe you'll see it in Kansas City with some of the free agent guys that kind of go flock over there, but like you said, T.O., you used a great word, sustainable. Like, this run is sustainable because of the pieces that they're putting in place. Like, locking down Logan for how long he did, locking down GP. You know, like, let's be honest, if Jesse didn't balk at that first offer, like, Jesse would be here too. And I think you make a good point, Willie, of like, they're not breaking the bank on certain guys. They have value, and they have what they believe everyone's value is. And in all honesty, like, if we looked at, we're going to talk about the practice today, like, do you see this team not being able to win a Super Bowl because they don't have Von Bell and Jesse Bates? No. Like, when you have caliber players on that side of the ball, like the Bengals do, guys are going to want to come and flock here and play. So I think it's a great point.
And that just got me thinking, Billy, and I can't even believe I'm going this direction. But I'm going to be very careful with how I choose my words here, because the tier of things I'm talking about is very different from where the Bengals are at this very minute. It's very Patriotsy. It is, you stick with the guys you know have value, and you only pay them at their value. You will let them walk the minute you think they're a little too old, and the Bengals haven't gotten to that point yet. That they won't put guys out the door when they think they're getting too old. They'll let them hang around. But they're not going to pay guys that they think are older more money just to stay. And they're not going to sign free agents that are older just because they need guys with names or they need guys with past production. They're always going to follow their model. And if they continue to follow that model, that's how this team stays very financially sustainable going forward, even with the crazy contracts they're going to have coming down the pipeline. Because you're going to pay Joe Burrow, you're going to pay Jamar Chase, and there's a real shot you're going to pay T. Higgins. Now, the next guy I think that has not received his extension that we should probably go ahead and pivot to, and he's a guy that will also kind of get us into joint practice, so that works out pretty well for us. DJ Reader is probably the other guy that's in this conversation if we're not talking about T. Higgins, Joe Burrow. And, we've talked a lot about T. Higgins on this podcast. I don't know that we need to beat that one to death, but I think the DJ Reader conversation now is really starting to take shape, because we have seen Trey Hendrickson's contract get extended. We have seen Logan Wilson get extended. DJ Reader and Chidobe Awuzie, two guys. Chidobe Awuzie probably not realistic at this point. He will want to himself probably have a whole season to prove his knees healthy and make a little more money. And the Bengals also probably want to wait, because if Chidobe Awuzie shows any sign of regression, they do have DJ Turner and they do have Cam Taylor-Britt. And they even have DJ Ivey, who started to flash a little bit in camp, really starting to show some promise in the DB core pipeline. So let's stick on Reader for a second. If you're the Bengals, and I can't remember who let's do T.O. to start this time. T.O., I feel like when we're talking Reader, you get real fired up. We all get fired up talking about DJ Reader. What am I talking about? I'm just picking T.O. because I'm picking T.O., baby. How important in the grand scheme of things, and especially it shows on days like today when he is just standing up for this team and putting it on his back, not taking any hell from the Packers. Calling Elton Jenkins just a guy. I'm pretty sure Elton Jenkins is like a multi-time Pro Bowler and maybe even all-pros guard. But DJ Reader says he wanted to get off the field. I thought he wanted to get kicked out, is what he said. I thought that was really funny. But T.O., to you, how critical is it to get DJ Reader extended? Is it a have to do it one where the Bengals would show some flexibility to go over with their price tag? Because for me, I don't know that I'm willing to go there outside of Burrow and Chase. I just don't know if I'm willing to extend myself to that point, especially for guys AJ.
Yeah, man. I think we've been on this train a while. I think DJ Reader is the most important guy onto the defense, and that includes Cheeto, that includes Jesse last year, includes Hendrickson, everyone. I think he's the most important, and especially in the division that we play in. You see what happens when we don't have a DJ Reader out there. Nick Chubb can run all over us. Lamar Jackson can run all over us. J.K. Dobbins can run all over us. It just
a broken J.K. Dobbins.
yeah, right. You have to have it. And the thing about DJ, which should make you feel okay about paying him, 2-3 year extension, 4-year extension, is that he isn't the Geno Atkins mold where Geno relied on, his speed and his power to get to the quarterback, right? That's what he was known for, getting after the quarterback, which is great if you have one of those guys that changes your defense. DJ is a run stopper, and he's flashed in pass rush opportunities when he has a chance. And that tends to last longer into your 30s. Whereas pass rushing, usually right when you get to that 30 mark, you kind of go downhill quick. So You can't pay everyone. If it comes down to T versus Reader, which that absolutely sucks, man. You got to go T every time. But man, if you can find a way to extend him, I don't think it'd be a team friendly deal, especially considering the market. But he is very important.
The hard part for me is, and I know it's just so hard to imagine losing him at this point because you're so right. And I think anytime you lose a special defensive player in particular, and offense quarterback, it's so central to everything. You lose him, that's kind of the mean. But losing a key central defensive player, and the Bengals are going to see it this year with whatever happens with Jesse Bates. They might have gotten lucky by having a replacement ready to go in Dax Hill already, so that might just kind of cover itself up a little more. But DJ Readers are hard to replace. That type of nose tackle is developed a lot more often than it's drafted. I mean, Mazzie Smith from Michigan, picked in the first round by Dallas, is probably the one exception, but not a guy that you'd probably put a first round grade on, but a guy you probably have to draft in the first round just because those type of guys are so rare. Man, Tio, I tend to agree. You probably have to find a way to get something done. But for me, I think where I see it is I just don't know that the Bengals are willing to break the bank. And so, Billy, I would love to hear your opinion on this as well, because we just kind of talked about this setting the culture, saving a little bit of money, these guys taking a little bit less money. I mean, when it comes to DJ Reader asking for a market level deal, he probably is fair in that. But I just love to hear your opinion on all of this because it's kind of a complex question in a way.
I mean, listen, I think the part that we're kind of overlooking a little bit here is the injury season. I think it helps the Bengals a lot because I think it helps the Bengals in their negotiation and what they think he's worth. And I also think it helps him what his worth is on the open market. Like, he's not getting any younger. I think when you look at a guy that's had that type of injury and the type of, like Tio says, his leverage and his everything, and you look at him injuring a spot like that 2 years ago where it's where he's getting all of his leverage from, I think it helps the Bengals both sides. I'm with you guys, though. I think we got to find a number. He's in that Jamar Joe category for me where we give you a number, you don't like it, like we're not calling back. You got to figure it out. And I understand that. I think you make a great point of, like, you don't really see first round nose tackles work out 10 out of 10 times. But, he gives me that Vince Wilfork vibe, man, a guy that's just going to come in and muddy up the game. And, like, yeah, if he goes to a team like New Orleans or goes to a Carolina or a Texans or Indiana, like, he's going to be effective wherever he goes just because of his style of play. But, to piggyback on what you guys said, I think he's very important, and he's a guy that I'm willing to have multiple negotiations with to find a number. And even if it's an extra third year or so to drop the number down per year, I'm fine with that too, because he's a guy in 3 or 4 years that in that system, I still think could be effective.
So I'm going to look up something real fast. I wonder what it would be to franchise tag him for a year. Because I think, okay, so it'd be $18.9 million on a franchise tag number.
I don't hate that.
I really don't either for DJ Reader. So to me, that's a realistic outcome to this, at least in a 1-year solution to me. He could definitely be a guy that, he plays out the whole string healthy. The Bengals have 1 more year proof. DJ Reader himself has 1 more year proof that he's going to stay healthy. I mean, if we get to this offseason, let's say T. Higgins has already dealt with that, situation's over, and they're sitting there with that franchise tag. I have a hard time seeing him not use it on DJ Reader. And not because
that makes sense on both sides. And like you said, like, the nightmare situation is you don't want to use that tag on T when you have to pay Jamar, because then you're like almost signing the fact away that T's gone after the 1 year because you're just not going to have enough in the reserve to pay them both. So I'm with you. If it comes down to a DJ tag next year, like, I think he's a perfect candidate on both sides for it.
And let's call it a double nightmare at that point. Let's say you don't get the T. Higgins extension done and you have to use that franchise tag. Then you're also letting DJ Reader get to the open market and get exposed to deals from any team. Just any team in the league teams that he has absolutely terrorized make an offer that want him in their offer or their defense. I mean, who wouldn't want DJ Reader at this point? Look at the Cleveland Browns. Look at what they just played. Dalvin Tomlinson, a player who is worse than DJ Reader and will make, I think, a couple million more dollars than DJ Reader will this season. This nose tackle position is definitely being recognized by teams as a way you can disrupt everything. And DJ Reader is definitely a precedent setter. And I think Vince Wilfork, Billy, I think that was a perfect reference.
Yeah,
it's two guys that are built big and are just super strong.
And that's a thing. Like I think, like you made a great point, Tio, as well. Like he's not the Geno built where like if he can't get you to the quarterback, like he can't stop the fucking run. Like he's longevity because he can stop the run and what he can do for the pass rush by stopping the run. And I think you made a great point, Willie, too. It's like so many of these teams going to this 3-technique defense. Like it's just the way to go, man. I mean, if you don't have a pass rusher like Myles Garrett, there's really no reason to have two guys on the end every single play in a 4-3. Like it's just kind of, I think, changing the way the game is, right? And you think about that 3-technique with a guy like DJ Reader. I mean, he sucks up two offensive linemen every other play. Like it really just it almost allows you to do a lot more stuff in the coverage game just because of how effective he can be.
And yeah, I think you put it perfectly, Billy. Tio, I'm going to let you give any closing thoughts on this DJ Reader discussion before we get into what Trey Hendrickson and DJ Reader both did to the Packers today.
Yeah, I mean, question for you guys: if it comes down to the Bengals, kind of like they did with Von Bell Pratt, if they can only give one guy the contract, who are you guys going with?
T.
Higgins and Reader.
Yeah,
it's got to be Higgins. I mean,
got to be T.
He's younger. It's just you can't offensive skill, man. It's all about Burrow. That makes Burrow better. You got to do things that make Burrow better for the long run.
Willie, let me ask you one before we move on. And like we're going down this rabbit hole of T, but if you're T's agent, are you playing for the franchise tag at a point to show that he can and he's worth one money?
You might be a little bit because
and like that's honestly like I've been thinking about this a lot the last couple of weeks. Is like if I'm T's camp, I'm in zero rush because God forbid there's an injury, obviously. But other than that, like if they kind of have the Bengals by the balls, if they don't like it and you tag them, it's kind of being like, hey, we can't let him go this year. We still have a chance to win a Super Bowl. We're keeping him at this price, but obviously we can't tag him again because of the reserve. We're not gonna have enough money to sign Jamar. And if he goes out and kicks ass these next few years, like, who knows the market he's going to have,
And to me, he's a little bit different of a story than Jesse Bates III.
Yeah.
Because it's all on tape already. I mean, with Jesse Bates III, there were these starts and stops consistently throughout his entire career. Yep. And the streakiness has continued. It's part of his story. He's a streaky player. Yeah. It's always going to be a part of the Jesse Bates III story. It's not a part of the T. Higgins story.
No.
I mean, every wide receiver has good games and bad games, but T. Higgins has every year, even as a rookie, sans maybe the first 4 or 5 games as he was settling in, he's T. Higgins, man. He takes up attention, he makes contested catches, and he wins down the field. Like
he's a top 5 player out of that draft.
Yeah, you know what? You know what's kind of worrying me is all the love Yoshi's getting right now. I just hope that at the end of the year they're not like, yeah, we have Yoshi to replace T. That is an absolute killer for me, and I can't do it.
I don't think they think that, fortunately. I think that they know that anytime you take a swing on a 6th-round receiver, which we've played this game, guys. We've seen Kobe Hamilton. We've seen, what was it, Mario Alford? Is that Mario Alford, the guy from Rutgers that I'm thinking of?
Yeah.
These 6th-round receivers have come and gone. And, I heard this on another podcast, but it would be great if he was like a guy that had a couple 500 to 700 yard seasons. You nailed that pick.
Yeah.
You hit a home run. So to think that's going to be the heir apparent to T. Higgins, the way that Charlie Jones is the heir apparent to Tyler Boyd, that's very premature in my book.
Yeah, I just think it's a huge mistake. Let's just say he walks. Let's just say they don't come a deal, or they don't, they franchise tag him. He walks after that. I just think that is going to absolutely kill whatever plans you have of getting to a dynasty. T's a top 10 guy in the league right now, and I don't feel bad saying that at all. I think T is so good.
And then I think and this is a whole other conversation. I don't want to go down the losing T. Higgins rabbit hole, but I think the minute you put yourself in a situation where you either lose Higgins or you're going to lose Higgins, you have to draft a first-round wide receiver, and that puts you in a spot immediately. And you have to
be all in next year. If we have to franchise T. Higgins,
that's your last chance.
I don't give a fuck who you got to bring in. You got to be the best roster in football. You have to be all the fuck in next year if T. Higgins gets franchised.
You just make it a lot harder for yourself if you let T. Higgins get in a situation where he leaves in a season or two. You just do. It just you get in a muddy situation, and you can afford it. That's the thing. The math, you can make it happen. So, what else did I want to talk about? Oh, I had Andre Yoshevich hype on my sheet. Tio, do you want to get to that now? No, let's do Trey Hendrickson. Actually, you know what? We're talking about wide receivers. Let's talk a little Yoshi, baby. Let's talk Yoshi. So Princeton himself is apparently thinking he's all hot and this and that on the practice field. No, we're not going to be mean to Princeton today. We're going to be nice to the Ivy League kid. Andre Yoshevich has surprised some people in training camp more than a sixth-round rookie would. So the interesting thing, it sounds like the Bengals were expecting him to be a lot rawer than he actually is. There's still some times where he just gets bossed when he's trying to break inside. And don't get me wrong, there's still some start-stop things with him that are very troubling. But in terms of physicality, in terms of straight line speed, in terms of all that stuff that you need to create separation, with verticality, that's all there. And it's in the contested catch stuff starting to show up. And he's also apparently starting to make, normal catches look normal, which is notably a part of development for young receivers. Not everything has to be a diving acrobatic catch. Sometimes just catching the ball in stride or, catching the ball and hitting the ground on a 10-yard slant, not a bad thing. Billy, I'm going to let you roll first on Andre Yoshevich. I mean, expectations are tempered for him because he's a sixth-round rookie, but how much do you think it adds to this team to have another fourth option in the pipeline down the stretch? Because we've seen Trent Irwin at times provide valuable depth for this team. He's getting to get older. He's not going to be around forever. I mean, how exciting would it be to have another guy like Andre Yoshevich at least in the pipeline?
I think it's the measurables, right? Like, I go to a comparison of a guy I've been thinking today is Jerome Simpson, right? Like a fourth type of option that has some size that can go up and get you the ball. Because with all due respect to Trent Irwin, just kind of put Joe in some of those tough spots. Like even in the Pittsburgh game, those two balls that he caught, had to be perfectly thrown to give him that advantage. So I think he makes the team. I've kind of had that sentiment before, even after he had some of those struggles in the first couple of rookie mini camps. I'm excited to the extent of I think he can provide a fourth option. But I think it's necessary. It's one of those things, too, where I think that fourth option being a rookie is way more effective. I think we saw the Auden Tate thing kind of just go by the wayside of just, hey, if I'm a 6th or 7th year guy and I'm only getting the ball 3 times a game, am I really going to fucking come in and give it my all? I'm not saying he didn't, but, Auden Tate was in there 70% of the time just to block, right?
Yeah.
If we can get a guy, like a rookie guy who's a little wet behind the ears, is just looking to come out there and make an impact, that's my kind of guy for a fourth receiver because, again, nothing against Trent Irwin. I think he has the ability to produce for them. But when we're just talking straight measurables, Trent Irwin's 5'9", 5'8", right? That's it. That's an issue, right? You want a guy that can go up and get the ball. So I love that aspect about it. And we'll see. I think, it's to kind of draw back to what Jamar said this week about Joe of being I don't want him playing week 1. And you kind of think back, I don't think it's talked about enough. Jamar didn't play for a month last year, and he just fucking ran off 11 straight wins. It's one of those things where, they did that with Trent Irwin producing like a wide receiver 2 some games.
Yeah.
So to add just another body and capable body and measurables in that room, I think just helps the team overall.
So while we're on the wide receiver conversation, before I talk a little bit more about our boy Yoshi, Trey Trent Irwin has apparently done nothing but flash all camp long. He's cemented as wide receiver 4, so that should be exciting for Bengals fans. We're a Trent Irwin podcast. We definitely love us some Trent Irwin, so we love to hear that. I like Trent Irwin a lot. I'm glad to hear that he's going to continue to be a producer and a guy that's involved in the offense. But Andre Josevich, I think this is, and Tio, you jumped away for a second. I don't know if you heard us talking, but I think the promise of him being a developmental backup is exciting, which is a funny thing to say because we're talking about the Bengals wide receivers. We're talking about a team that has Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd. Like, we're talking about developmental backups on the Same Old Stripes podcast. Yeah, we are. To me, and Billy, I think it's everything you hit on. The measurables and having a guy like that can at least come into a game, win you a ball down the field, get up and make a play. I just like that. And having more guys in the system that can, be a pair of hands for Burrow and make Burrow can trust. Tio, in that sense, how encouraging is it to hear that he's had that kind of camp and has shown at least some potential to maybe be that kind of guy in a quicker timeline than maybe we expected?
Yeah. First, was I on mute when I was on that phone call, or could you?
Yeah,
see me? Oh,
I couldn't hear a thing.
Good, because there was a couple cuss words. It was my best friend from high school, and we just talked the crap. But I thought I came back and I saw I wasn't muted, and I'm like, oh no.
We can hear you at all, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty exciting, especially considering where we were at, at the start of camp, where the reports were that he was a little bit behind, maybe, that, it wasn't as exciting that we thought it would be right away. So it is good, man. And I think if anything, it showed in the Chiefs game last year that we need a fourth guy that can really get, either separation or win jump balls. And that's kind of what Yoshi is probably at this point, is just more of a jump ball receiver. Whereas Charlie Jones might give you that slot versatility that can really win a one-on-one. And, we'll always have some love for T.I., everything that he's done with Burrow and the way Burrow talks about him, you can tell he's going to be on the roster as long as Joe Burrow's on the roster. It kind of feels like an Aaron Rodgers situation where wherever that guy goes, the other guy goes. So, I'm excited, man. I think it's good that they address receiver, because the last thing we want again is TB going down and then them just doubling the outsides and then us being able to do nothing. So it's exciting. I think Yoshi could probably be kind of like what you said, a 500, 700 yard guy eventually, and win some jump balls, be a red zone threat.
Yeah, and the other thing is it really doesn't matter at the end of the day. If he doesn't work, they can just do this again because it's a cheap pick. It's a 6th round pick. This is the kind of swing you take in the 6th round. I know some people that really weren't a fan of this pick, and I kind of understand it. They thought they could have used, another developmental offensive lineman or a defensive, something. But it's hard to not get in the physical traits, and having this guy at least in the pipeline, it doesn't hurt. And it is different than Charlie Jones. Charlie Jones has all the stereotypical wide receiver traits. He's not sneaking up on you like Adam Thielen. He's not like, oh, this guy's an outside receiver. No, he's Julian Edelman, baby. That's the he's not obviously that level of player yet because he's a rookie out of Purdue and he's like 25 years old. But it's that sort of stuff. It's the shifty slot guy, all that sort of mumbo jumbo. That's Andre Josevich, everyone. That's our conversation there. Oh, shameless plug. We had an interview with his position coach from Princeton. If you haven't checked that out yet, Brian Flynn, great chat. Go check it out. Literally, most of you watch the show. You don't listen. So either go to your little feed and click the little icon or whatever. There's always an icon and go find the thing. Just watch it and hit like. I'm asking a lot of you, but just do it. Anyway, we're going to get to like 1 or 2 more things before we get out of here. And the other thing, we're playing Same Old Stripes beats the dead horse today. We're going to get into some Big Ten talk too if we're not careful. Let's talk about Jonah Williams. Jonah Williams is apparently looking pretty comfortable at right tackle, which is kind of surprising to me to an extent. Mostly that he looks so freaking comfortable. Frank Pollock went to say that he looks like he's been playing it for years, and that it's obvious that Jonah took the off-season approach to becoming a right tackle seriously. Jonah sounds really confident about it. He says that he's kind of had a change of view on it, understanding that right tackles are making just as much money as left tackles. It sounds like he's kind of come to see the reality of the situation a little bit more clearly and is really taking it in stride. And I think for all things Bengals, that's incredibly encouraging. Tio, I'm going to let you jump in on this first. I mean, we were having conversations about, is it going to be Leal? Maybe do you start Carmen? What's this rotation look like? To me, I think we're best case scenario. Jonah Williams looking comfortable and confident at right tackle. Your thoughts there?
Man, I feel like we're hitting on all the guys that we've talked about over the summer, and all the guys that I may have been wrong on.
It's our summary page. It's like, what was Sable and Stripes wrong about over the last
3 years? Especially Logan Wilson, man. I think Logan had a lot more to do, obviously, with the contract and forking out 12 to 15 mil, but obviously his contract is great. So with Jonah, man, I've dogged him almost all year, and what's weird is that if he plays the same way as he did at left tackle as right tackle, it's going to be so much better, especially if Joe's the quarterback, because Joe will see all of that pressure, whereas most of the time he didn't see that pressure, which resulted in most of Jonah's sacks, right?
Yeah.
So if he plays at his 70 level, at his 75 PFF level, this offensive line is going to be great. And it's going to be the best offensive line that Burrow's ever had. And, even with Leal last year, Leal wasn't, beating people really in pass pro. So if Jonah can just get to where he's been, and I think it could work, man. And people, I know you can already see it, 6 months down the road. Should we extend Jonah? Should we? We need to extend him? No, we shouldn't. We're not going to, and we shouldn't. But if he can give you a good year and then, turn around, get a big contract in free agency, that's a comp pick, and, you go replace or you keep Leal here. And I just think it could result in very good outcome for the Bengals.
Yeah, and for the Bengals, I think it's the Jonah Williams being extended or being here longer term, even in the next year. I think that ship has kind of sailed. I don't even see the franchise tag being much a reality, just given what that price tag would be and what they're already paying to the offensive line. I think whoever starts at right tackle is going to be a bargain bin free agent next year, or someone they draft and are really excited about with the top 3-round pick. It's kind of how I see it going. Just nature of the beast. That's how this thing cycles, baby. But I think to see Jonah Williams saying all the right things, doing all the right things, and looking the right way on the field, you have to feel pretty encouraged if you're a Bengals fan. I think the one big fear you had is Jonah Williams showing up and this being a big old pout fest, because we have seen players in the past do that. And let's just be real about it. We had all the indicators to think we were going to get a big old pout fest. His agent was putting out some very pouty information to the media. There was the hem-haw about, I wish I knew sooner, I want to get traded. That seems to have not really been how he felt about it, like, in the grander scheme, but more about, like, I need to just express how unhappy I am about the whole situation. And I can live with that. We're all humans. But the minute you show up in the building to have the right attitude, I think that's huge. And I think that whoever will pay him down the line, you have to look at this situation and feel a lot better about the guy you're going to get down the road. Billy, I know that we've been all over the place on Jonah Williams on this show, but what are your thoughts about A, Jonah Williams looking good, and B, what that means for Jonah Williams down the road?
I think it's training camp. I think we all need to
True.
My honest opinion, man, no matter the situation, if it's up to me, Cody Ford's my starting right tackle. I just think there's obviously some relationship and some cohesiveness with him in Orlando. I think that's important. Like, I just think it's like you've broken up with the girlfriend. She keeps coming around. Like, I don't know, man. And I think you made a great point, Willie, about the pow fest. I think he's handled it the right way as a pro, but like there's 50 grown men in that locker room every day. Like, the second shit starts to go south and they line up Myles Garrett on top of him every fucking play week 1, like, what do you think natural selection is going to happen in that locker room, right? Like, everyone's going to be looking there. The media is going to go right there. Twitter is going to go right there. Like, am I rooting for it? Yeah. Like, if he's the best option for it, fine. But I just think that there's so many, like, unsaid factors of him looking well in drills when it's training camp compared to there's a top defensive end on lining up against him on a side where he's never played a snap. Like, it concerns me. Like, it 100% concerns me because I do think it's a better offensive line, obviously, with the addition of Orlando, no matter what. But, like, we're putting our franchise quarterback, who's going to be, no matter what you say, if he plays week 1, is not going to be 100% with his legs, where they're probably putting the best pass rusher in the game against a guy that's never taken a live snap in an NFL regular season game on the right side. Like, I don't like it. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I'm a little sour on it.
And I really do think, and this is something I've said a lot to like my dad and like other people I've talked to about the Bengals, but you're going to know everything you need to know week 1, in my opinion. I mean, he's going to have games where he looks better and games where he looks worse. But if Jonah Williams is really going to take on this right tackle thing and have this be his position that he owns, you're going to know week 1. Because if he gives up, I can give you a sack and a half to Myles Garrett. I really can. I'll give it to you. But if it's the consistent over and over and over again pressure that we've seen him allow to other players at times throughout his career, where he is not showing good balance and he's not showing that he's hitting his marks and he's not showing any power, then I'm going to be concerned. And I think, Billy, at this point, that should still be a concern. I think that's where you're totally right. In training camp, it's okay to feel encouraged. We all feel encouraged about things in training camp. That's why we have it every year. And that's why we're all football fans are stupid, because we buy into these stupid storylines and then they come into the season and they don't matter at all every year. And then other things that we wouldn't think matter, they do. So
I'll be honest though, he may be hurt more than anyone else by Burrow probably not playing any snaps in the preseason, because it like, I would think, I don't know if they've set it out. I'd assume at least in week 2, maybe week 3, he takes maybe a drive or two. Jonah, I'd assume that he's going to get he needs to get reps there, obviously, I'd say. But
I think it sounds like they're going to at least dress these guys for one of the games.
Yeah, I'm like, to not get reps with Joe there, like, I think you're going to see a little bit of what you saw last year, man, honestly. Like, I don't think to the extent, because I think the overall talent level is just light years better with Orlando Brown there. But, like you said, the sack and a half. Can you see 2 or 3 false start penalties of just not really on the same page of the game? Like, there's a lot of factors that go into this thing, man, where, like, I don't want to say, like, and we'll get into the last part of it here, like, I don't want to be on the Jamar train, like, I want him to fucking play week 1, but, like, I'm nervous because it's not, like, I think they're the better team than the Cleveland Browns. They play them 10 times. I think they beat them 6 or 7. But with the circumstances that they're going to have going in, of your franchise quarterback not taking any snaps for 6-7 weeks, tackle playing a different position that he's never played before, like, Myles Garrett's going to feast on that, man. I think we have to eat that week 1. I really do.
Yeah, Billy, I think you made a good point, man. With it's training camp, let's take a step back. Obviously, we're all excited about Jonah being average.
Woo!
But yeah, man, I think we do have to wait till week 1 to really see, because we already talked about this, man. Myles Garrett's not going to line up on Orlando. He's going to go all on Jonah. So, yeah, I mean, and everyone's going to be pissed off if Jonah gives up 3 sacks and they're going to be calling for his head. So, yeah, I'm with you, Billy.
Like that's my question. We're like, I get it. We're saying all the right things. You get beat like a drum week 1. There's 17 reporters at your locker room now. Like, what do we like? Say now when it doesn't matter. Like, what are you saying when? And I hate to give him a slack too. Like, it's probably not his fault. He's going up against the best defensive lineman in the game in week 1 of limited reps at a position he's never played. But, like, at some point, I feel like it's kind of the narrative has to mean something, right? Like the narrative last year was always, oh, the cohesiveness of the offensive line. Then it was the measurables of Jonah. The arms are too long. Then is Joe holding the ball too long? Then, like, obviously when you start winning games and having cohesiveness, great. But, I mean, if he's better, and like, I hate to put this on him, if he has a better year last year, they might win 13, 14 fucking games. Like, that's just like what it is. The amount of sacks, the amount of pressures he gave up last year, you don't ever want to single out one guy, but fuck it. If he's better, they win more games last year. I'm like, you have to say it.
And what does that equate to in the long run? Maybe that equates to a 1 seed, which
Home
gives you
field.
home field advantage, which really swing. I mean, we've seen what this home crowd does to road teams. So if Billy, I think that's a very strong point. I mean, I think that's a thing we talked about at some point on the show. I think we did talk about how many more wins is Orlando Brown Jr. worth, and it might be 1 or 2.
Yeah.
If that's what that move buys you, then you take that every day of the week. If you can sign an offensive lineman that it was worth 1 or 2 wins a season, which, you look at a guy like Trent Williams, who's probably worth 2 or 3, maybe even 3 or 4 on some of his best seasons. I mean, having players that are special players changes things. And having players who are liabilities, well, it creates liability, and it loses you games. I mean, how many times do we see good teams lose games because of something stupid that happened because they couldn't trust a player? It happens all the time in this league, and especially happens with teams as they're developing.
I mean, like, to beat a dead horse, we get 2.5, a second and a half more on 4th down in the Super Bowl. I mean, like, we're all having different lives at this point. You know what I mean? Like, you hate to hammer down on it, but like, I think that's and maybe it's a bias thing, and maybe I'm being a little too hard on Jonah. Like, that's my stance on it. Like, when you created this narrative, and I'm not 100% again saying it's his fault, because I do think that there's a lot of factors that went in that he's probably not had the fairest of shakes out there. But at some point, man, like, you are who you are, right? Like, you are what your production is. We can talk about potential and looking good all we want to, or blue in the face. Like, until you line up week 1 and show me that you can do it, I don't really believe much in it.
So let's leave the Jonah Williams discussion there, and let's quickly do a little tiny mini Bengals-Packers preview thing. Let's just each give one player where you would love to see in this preseason game. We know who the guys that aren't going to play are. It's pretty much all the starters. That's who's not going to play. Breaking news. I'm not saying it's official, but the Same Old Stripes is reporting that none of the players that you want to see like play full-time things are going to play. So I'm going to go first, and I'm going to go with Chase Brown. I need to see what Chase Brown can do for me, man. He's going to be the guy behind Mixon in a lot of ways, and especially if Trevion Williams isn't healthy in camp, they're really going to need him to be someone. Chris Evans has always been more of a passing game running back, and he's even lacked a little bit there. Apparently, he's shown a lot more aggression as a pass blocker this camp, it's still, like Billy said, it's training camp. So we'll temper our expectations and our excitement until then. But I want to see Chase Brown get out, start to create some lanes. We haven't seen any Chase Brown highlights from camp, man. It's starting to scare me a little bit because he's an older player. Chase Brown, do a little something. Just look like Chase Brown. Give me some, 7-8 yard carries here. Let's go. Tio, you're unmuted currently, so I will let you go second with a guy you want to see in the preseason game.
That's interesting. Man, I'm kind of curious to see Battle. I don't know if he'll play because he's been a little bit banged up. But that's a guy who I thought was going to be the starter coming in over Nick Scott. And, Nick Scott hasn't done a lot for me so far out of the limited stuff that we've been able to see. It's a lot of him being the over-the-top safety and him not getting there, which hopefully it's just training camp and whatever. But, Nick Scott, man, because you haven't heard a lot about him, and obviously he's been hurt. But, Chris Evans, that's a good choice. But I'm gonna go with Myles Murphy, man, because if we can get something out of him, and it sounded like he had a pretty good day today, I think that's going to go very far in our defensive line this year and going forward. If you can, you kind of know what you got with Osai, and if you can kind of get him another running mate, that's exciting to me. So I would like to see a little bit from Myles, maybe like the Joseph Ossai game his rookie year against Tom Brady. Like, how fun would that be? So I'll go with the easy choice, man. I'll go Myles.
Yeah, and that would be a big deal for Bengals fans. Having that other pass rush weapon is obviously one of the reasons people are really excited about the potential of the Myles Murphy pick. Haven't seen a whole lot of him in camp yet. Like you said, did have a good day today. But definitely a guy, I mean, first round pick, baby. If he has a big game, I think we're all going to be a lot more fired up about what can be potentially coming through the pipeline. Billy, who are you excited to? And I don't know if anyone's actually going to watch this preseason game. I don't think I'm going to watch it live. So that kind of is what that is. But Billy, who are you excited to see in this preseason game?
I'm going to go Brad Robbins. I mean, I'm excited to see, a drafted punter kind of just put a couple of punts within the 20. I've heard a lot of good things, obviously, through the preseason stuff. But again, it's preseason. Nobody's, waiting to feed their family on blocking a punt. So, I love to see some of the hang time. And listen, I think it's an acquisition that, I mean, call a spade a spade. Like, he's going to be the punter week one. Like, love you, Drew Chrisman, but
sorry, Drew Chrisman.
You don't draft a punter in the 6th round or the 6th or 7th round, whatever. Well, you don't draft a punter in general if he's not fucking making the team. So, it's just excited to see, just some of the leg, and I think what we've seen in the joint practice today, and kind of the narrative has been the first couple weeks of training camp is field position is going to be a thing, man. This defense is going to get a lot of 3 and outs, and the more time we can start with the other team within the 20, like. I look at, we talk a lot about points per game, right? Like, you punt away with 1 minute and 10 seconds left and 2 timeouts and 4 halftime, and you pin a team within the 10, you got a chance to get that ball back around the 50 or your own 40 with 25 seconds left, and that's a lifetime for Joe, right? Like, I think the addition of Robbins, and if he's the ability to be the punter that we all think he can be, like, it creates points for the Bengals, and I think that's something that I'll be looking for all preseason, because you think he'll get a lot of kicks in, and just seeing kind of the dynamic of it.
Well, there you have it, folks. We're looking at a trio of Bengals rookies to have a nice little preseason game for you. We're talking Brad Robbins. We're talking. Oh man, I forgot who I picked. I know that we're talking Myles Murphy. And we're talking Chase Brown too. We're also talking Chase Brown. Ooh, what now? They're going to say Willie forgot. Willie didn't forget. But that's all we got for you on the Same Old Stripes podcast today. The next time we talk, we'll be reacting to guys that put on Bengals uniforms and played guys in Packers uniforms. But a bunch of those guys aren't actually going to play any official games for either of those teams in either of those uniforms. So stay tuned. Same Old Stripes will have all your preseason coverage coming up. I think that's what we've got for you today. So for T.O. and Billy, thank you for listening.
Who dat?